and thank y'all for joining. Let's go ahead and get started. You know, I always like to start with some ground rules, so that's where we're going to go first. Okay, ground rules. Comfort isn't the goal. Okay, comfort isn't the goal. So in this conversation, there may be some moments where you're like, "Ooh, that feels a little bit uncomfortable." I want you to lean into that. We are actually specifically going to talk about discomfort in this session, which I'm excited to do. So, just keep in mind that if that uncomfortable bubbles up, one, we're going to get you some tools to navigate that, and two, discomfort is usually a sign of growth. You want to lean into that. If a question comes up, please go ahead and drop it into the chat. We definitely want that to happen. So engage in the chat is the second one, so ask what you want to ask. You can put them in the chat. If you don't want your name attached to it, the Q&A option is available for you. So you can go push the Q&A button, choose anonymous, and then drop your questions over there. Okay. I will be keeping my eye on the chat as we go, and probably answer things as we talk through, just because I kind of like to engage that way. I feel like it makes it a little bit more interesting. So feel free to drop things. When I catch them, I'm going to go ahead and, respond to them. And then we'll have a whole Q&A section at the end where you'll get to ask whatever you would like. All right. So just want to give you that, but please engage in the chat and I'm going to ask you questions along the way. Third, I'm always going to give you real conversations with real candor. I'm not a big fan of the artificial performative style of training. I like to talk to you like you are an adult, and I like to give you an opportunity to talk back to me like I'm an adult. So my hope is that we'll be able to engage that way and have us an opportunity to, have an exchange instead of it just being like a one-way conversation. And so please, please, please expect real conversations with real candor. And by the way, just want to give you a couple other things. Yes, you will receive the recording, but it will not include the Q&A. There are usually lots of gems dropped during the Q&A. But the reason that I do not share the Q&A is I'm usually answering on the fly. And so sometimes I don't read the question clearly and I don't want people to, only get partial information. And secondly, it's a little bit of a bonus if you happen to attend in person. So you get the benefit of having that Q&A. And then lastly, and I am always going to ask this repeatedly, please, please, please take the survey at the end. The survey means a lot because it helps me to be able to figure out if what I'm doing for you is valuable, if I should continue to do it, what I should include. It gives you a question where you can tell me what you'd like to hear about, if you needed more. I'd love to hear all of that. And then, of course, if you decide you want to try to work with us, there's a way for you to request to be contacted there as well. All right. So those are the ground rules. If we're all good with those, can I get some exclamation points in the chat? Let me know that we are good. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. So you all know that this is a part of my Humaning Well series. I've been talking about Humaning Well online quite a bit. This, kind of came about as a result of my TED Talk. And it's kind of changed my life a little bit. But essentially, what Humaning Well is a resilience framework for building the capacity for change. What I'm looking to do is try to help people to be better at navigating difficulty. I want us to be stronger. I want us to be able to navigate, and thrive and recover all, as we are facing challenges or setbacks or adversity. And the thing I always want to make sure people understand is that resilience isn't about avoiding hardship or about just kind of like being really rigid and standing strong. It is really about developing the skills, the mindset, and the support systems that you need to manage what, is coming at you, so that you can effectively navigate that. And so the Humaning Well framework has 4 pillars, and those are focused on helping people to build resilience by sharing resources and tactics connected to your health, your wealth, your relationships, and your growth. I did walk through these in detail in the first session. So if you'd like a deeper dive, feel free to jump in there. But health isn't just your physical health. Wealth isn't just your money. Relationships, not just, your close personal relationships, and growth is a very expansive category as well. So I do encourage you to go back and listen to that if you haven't heard it. But this is a continuation of the Humaning Well learning series. Okay. This session is about the self, because sometimes we have self work to do. Okay. And so I'm going to talk through some of the things that, kind of cause us to need to, think about the ways that, we may be in our own way. And a lot of it is that first and foremost, we are socialized to be seen as good or helpful. All right. Not necessarily if, necessarily being good or helpful, but being seen is really important. And we have seen that performative nature show up in lots of ways, across the internet, whether it was black squares or, blue bracelets or whatever. But performing is kind of part of the human experience at this time. And so, sometimes we do not have boundaries, or we don't know how to say no, or we haven't really been taught to do anything other than be helpful to others, but not necessarily how to assess when we are going a bit too far. And so from a young age, we're usually taught that our value comes from how useful we are. Like how helpful I can be to other people. And it shows up in interesting ways. Like, don't be too difficult. Oh, you're such a good helper. Can you make yourself available? And so some of this, we need to do some self work, is a product of us living in a society where we are socialized to be seen as good and helpful, even if at times it can be to our own detriment. All right. The second thing that we also have to navigate is that we tend to prioritize comfort over growth. Okay. So people are naturally wired to survive. We are not naturally wired to thrive. Thriving takes a different kind of effort, and comfort feels like survival. So we get familiar routines and outcomes that we know and not a lot of risk. And so all of those things feel really yummy to us, whereas growth, on the other hand, demands that you step into spaces that you don't know what's going to happen. Okay. And so we often can say we want change, but when it comes to the discomfort, when we have to stretch our mindset, when we have to admit that we're wrong, when we have to face hard truths, what happens is we kind of shrink back from that. We're like, it's not a good time. I don't want to talk about that right now, or I'm just protecting my peace. And what we're really doing is protecting our ego. Like, we have a fear of failure. We're trying to navigate things that are actually, prohibiting us from having the opportunity to grow. And there is a lot of benefit for social validation. Like, maintaining appearances is rewarded. So doing what's expected, staying in your lane, going along to get along, we tend to, that goes back to that being socialized as good and helpful. We tend to prioritize that comfort. It is often very rewarding, but the real deal is the true peace only comes when we grow. All right. So comfort might feel peaceful in the moment, but if it's rooted in fear or avoidance, it ultimately becomes a trap. And we are going to have to face that at some point or another anyway. All right. All right. Last layer that we need to think about when we're talking about some of the self work that we have to do is, so what I see is that sometimes we are lacking confidence. We're unsure what to say. We have some hesitation. Okay. And this is normal human behavior. Sometimes we know something's wrong, or we see something's happening, but we don't know what to say in the moment, or we really aren't sure if we're the right person to say something. I've had that experience as well, where it's like, I see this isn't right, but am I the person? Or who is the person? Can we go get the person? So sometimes that happens. And so, I just want to make sure that we recognize that, like, this is a normal part of the human communication puzzle, but it gets in the way of our self-work as well. We, kind of rest in our fear, or, being like, not sure I'm the person. And we freeze up, and it's not because we don't care, but it's because we're uncertain, or we're unsafe, or we're not sure if we're qualified, or whatever that is. And so these are some of the things that get in the way of the self. Now, I told y'all I like to chat. So here we are with our first question for the evening, and that is, what does it mean to be a good human? And you can just drop your answers in the chat so we can, have a little bit of a conversation. When you hear that, what does it mean to be a good human? I always tell people, I teach people how to be good humans. What does that mean to you when you hear that? To be honest, Donna, make sure you change your settings so that you have everyone, so we can all see your chats. Thank you for that. Kind, compassionate, empathetic, lead with empathy. I like that. I do like that. It is someone who's concerned about themselves and the community, not just at the expense of the community. These are good. Hey, Will, to be self-aware and lead with self-care. Love, love, love that answer. Okay, good, good, good. I'm seeing be intentional with words and actions, a person that respects themselves and others. Yes, the well-being of themselves and the community. Yes, absolutely. Okay, this is what I mean when I say be a good human. All right, being helpful, being authentic, patient, kind, not boastful. Hey, Conrad, good to see you. Purposeful and intentional in creating value beyond themselves. Absolutely. These are really good humaning answers. Okay. I love these. These are so good. Your life is productive for you and the people you are connected to that are around you, not hypocritical in your standards or boundaries. Listen to all these wonderful answers we have for being good humans. And we are struggling to find good humans in 2025, right? But that's okay because we're going to show up and we're going to be some good humans ourselves. All right. So let's get through this content about being good. All right. So being good requires us to actually be good. Like we have to actually work on that, like the being part. Like it's some labor in that. And the first thing that you have to do is practice being honest with yourself. You have to practice being honest with yourself. And what that means is, are we saying yes to things that we really want to say no to because we think we have to say yes? How often is that happening? And if we think we have to, where did you get that? Who made you think that that was what had to happen? Okay. So we need to practice being honest and integral with ourselves first. So all of these fantastic things that you dropped in here, I want to make sure that I'm not hypocritical. I want to make sure that I have boundaries. I want to make sure that I'm showing up with courage and commitment and alignment. I want to make sure that I'm actively listening. Are we doing that for ourselves? Am I doing it for me? Because very often we're really, really, really good at doing it for other people. We are not always really good at doing it for ourselves. Okay. And so what happens is, yes, it is very true, Tara, that what happens is, and I'm not sure if you're Tara or Tara, please forgive me, but you are 100% right that a lot of times in a lot of societies, girls are often raised to be people pleasers and end up being women who are also people pleasers. I would venture to say that we are in a society at this point where people are being raised to be people pleasers. People will lie to your face to avoid discomfort. All right. We are all navigating what happens when we are not honest with ourselves. Okay. And so, what we want to do is start, of the practice of at least checking in to make sure we are okay. One of the simple ways that you can start being honest with yourself is really checking in to see if you are okay when someone asks you how you're doing. Hey, how are you doing? A lot of times, what do you do? Oh, I'm good. Are you good? Or do you think you need to say you're good, right? Like, start actually asking. When someone invites you somewhere and you're like, oh, yeah, I would love to go. Would you really love to go? Or do you think you should go? Okay. Is there an opportunity for you to really kind of get to the root of why you're showing up in a way that may not actually be the part of you that is being honest? Okay. We're showing up. We're doing what we think is the right thing and not necessarily doing the thing that we need. And so we got to make sure we're practicing that. I always ask myself too, when it comes to being honest with myself, like, do I have the energy for this? Because sometimes I am responding to the social cues and not to the like personal cues. So, like, first things first, do I have the energy for this? Right. And if the answer is no, then the no is enough. All right. The no is plenty. I'm okay saying no in this particular space. And then the other thing is, I always try to make sure I give myself permission to redefine what it means for me to be honest with myself. So it doesn't have to just be, that I am declining things. It doesn't have to just be that I am setting boundaries. Sometimes me being very honest with myself is being really, really truthful about why I didn't really work out this week. Right? It's not a beat up thing. Sometimes it's just me being like, let me face this information. And so we have to practice doing things like this. It is tough. It is tough. The world encourages us to show up as our best self everywhere. We also have the benefit of social media where everything is a celebration and a win. And so, think about the ways that you can practice being really honest with yourself, especially about the tough stuff and also about the good stuff. And we're going to talk about some of the good stuff in a moment, but make sure that you are practicing this. So that's step one. The second one that I want you to think about is boundaries. I saw boundaries several times. Boundaries are tough, okay? We all think that we are great at them. I actually did an episode on the podcast about boundaries. It was the last episode, episode 7. Boundaries are a part of being good. They are. Real goodness includes boundaries. Real helpfulness includes limits. Really being whole is more valuable than being liked. And I have to actually have some boundaries to do that. Because what happens is we're showing up for others at the cost of showing up for ourselves. All right. I am going to show up for you, even though I haven't done what I needed for me. And it's not sustainable. We really cannot pour from an empty cup, but we think that we are doing it well. And so it's even deeper than that. Really, if we're just honest, we just shouldn't have to. Like, it's kind of not okay. Right? We shouldn't have to continue to pour from an empty cup. And so being helpful isn't bad. I'm not trying to send that message at all. But if it comes at the cost of your health or your peace or your purpose, then we've got to start to pay attention to, like, wait a minute, I might need some boundaries here. Okay. I might need to make sure that I am doing the right things. And it's that restrictive behavior where we are not checking in, right? That being honest with ourselves, that making sure that we have boundaries and limits. When we are not doing that, we're putting ourselves at greater risk. So you have to live with you. Do you like you when you allow people to run you over? I don't like me when I let people run me over. I don't like the me that I am to me. I don't like the me that I am to the people that I share my home with. Right. And so if that's the way things are, then I need to make sure that I know how to set some boundaries. Now, the good news is in this session, we're going to give you some tools to do that. Okay. So if you listen to the Humaning Well podcast, episode 7, there is a download that you can get that has a deeper dive of this information. But I am at the very least going to walk you through 5 steps to creating boundaries that stick, because boundaries are hard. Okay. I want to make sure you hear me say that. Boundaries are hard. People think it's as simple as just saying, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to stick with it. But that is not the way the world works. We all know, we have all started, our workout plan on January 1st. And by January 20th, it's a completely different thing. It is hard to stick with things, period. Boundaries are no different. And so let's talk about 5 steps that you can take to actually help you go ahead and get through. All right. First things first, figure out what you need first. Figure out what you need first. Okay. So before you can actually set a boundary, okay, you have to know why you need the boundary. All right. Why do I need the boundary? Is it because I'm feeling drained? Is it because I'm feeling taken advantage of? Is it because I'm frustrated or overextended? Is it my workload? What is the reason that I need the boundary? Am I not, having clear communication? Why do I need a boundary? All right. If you can get clear about the why, then it's a lot easier to even know what the boundary should be. Okay. And so an example is, think back to the last time you felt, overwhelmed or overextended or uncomfortable. What happened? Get clear on your values. We talked about how to get clear in your values in the first of this series. You can define what your values are, and you can say, oh, this thing is rubbing up against my values. And then the other thing that you can do that can be very helpful is make sure that you're communicating to yourself as you're getting clarity. Instead of saying, oh, I really hate late meetings. Be clear with yourself. I'm just so much better when I log off by 6 p.m. because I get a chance to recharge and take care of my personal business. That's a different thing. Now I know what it is that I'm missing. It's not that I hate late meetings. What I really don't like is not having the energy to recharge and take care of my personal business. And so get clear about what it is that you need. That's step 1. Step 2, speak confidently. You want to be direct, you want to be specific, and you want to be unapologetic about what the boundary is. Unapologetic does not mean that you have to be rude. It means that you want to be pointed and you want to be clear. A boundary that's unclear is a boundary that will not work. Period. If it is not clear, you won't stick to it. No one around you will stick to it. The boundary is going to be ineffective. Okay. So you want to be direct. You want to be specific. You want to be unapologetic. And you also want to make sure you use I statements like, I need at least a day's notice for me to take care of urgent tasks. That way I can go ahead and have, the time to work them into my schedule. All right. That's a boundary. I'm not going to be urgent 5 minutes and I can get it done. I need urgent 24 hours. Okay. We also want to make sure that we are firm, but neutral, right? Like we don't want to over explain, but we also don't want to soften. We can find ourselves in, this really nice neutral communication ground. I see this no as a full sentence in the chat. I'm going to address that in just a second because I think I want to make sure I give some frame for that because it is, but I want to give you some frame. All right. And then the other thing too, is that we want to make sure that, your boundaries are going to be tested. So sometimes, you want to be prepared with that clarity and that, unapologetic energy. That's why we want to speak confidently about it because you're gonna run up against some pushback. It's gonna happen, okay? And so we want to make sure that we're prepared for that. Now, I saw this no as a complete sentence in the chat, and I just want to kind of make sure that we're clear that no is a complete sentence. But there's a responsible way to tell people no, particularly if they are people who play certain roles in our lives. Okay, so there are people you can no is a complete sentence with, but there are some people that you need to be very thoughtful about what your no might sound like. For example, when you are dealing with young people, like your own children, what we sometimes do is we want to say no because no is a complete sentence, but also it's very helpful when we're dealing with young people to make sure they understand the reason for the no. Okay, when we are dealing with leaders, we may not need to over explain, but it is sometimes very helpful if you say no, and here is the reason. No, I am not going to be able to take on that urgent task. Unfortunately, I need to make sure that I take care of my personal business this evening. Here is what I can do, right? So, no is a complete sentence, but we also want to make sure that we're taking care of our relationships. So, I always want to give that some frame because there are some relationships we can just kind of throw our nose around and it doesn't cause us any detriment or harm. And always, no to yourself can always be a complete sentence. But let's make sure we're being thoughtful about the necessary framing that has to happen in relationships where, we have maybe a little bit of risk involved. Okay. So I just want to toss that out there. All right. So that's number two. Number three is please, please, please commit to yourself. Okay. Please, please, please commit to yourself. There's a lot of committing to yourself in this session here, and that's for a reason. If you don't respect your own boundary, nobody else will either. Okay. So if you say that you don't and then you do it anyway, everybody's going to say you do it anyway. And they're going to violate and cross that boundary every single time that they possibly can. Okay. So you have to do it. If you say, I do not check emails after 8 o'clock, don't send me an email at 8:30. Okay. If you prefer to shake hands, lead with a handshake. Don't open yourself up for a hug. You have to respect your own boundary. Okay. If you don't respect your boundary, no one will ever respect it either. Okay. We have to resist the urge to make exceptions unless it is an absolutely necessary circumstance. Okay. But we have to role model. That way, folks know. Oh, you are committed to that, and I see it. I will give you an example. And Conrad is in here, so he can attest to this. I have a boundary where I do not talk to people before 10 a.m. I make rare exception for friends I truly care about who happen to be morning people. All right. But people know if you call or text me before 10 a.m., it is a very likely chance I will say nothing to you. I'm not going to respond. I'm not going to react. I cannot because I am a better human if I do all the things and I'm usually awake. Okay. I'm usually awake by 7. I'm usually going to be much better if I don't talk to anybody until 10. Okay. Boundaries. There are some exceptions. And because I adhere to my boundary, 99% of the time when someone does catch me on the phone before 10 a.m., the first thing they say is, oh, wow, I didn't expect to catch you, but it's so good that you actually are available. I'm surprised that you're talking. I'm surprised that you're on the phone. Or thank you for taking the call. I appreciate you making room for me because people know about the boundary. All right. That's how strong your boundaries should be. People should know that the boundaries are so real that they are aware when they are getting the benefit of crossing them. Okay. So, yes, absolutely. Okay. Oh, Carrie. Carrie shared that she walked out of a beauty shop looking like Groucho Marx on the way to a family photo shoot and was as upset. Ooh, okay. Internally as she was externally, I not only paid, but I also tipped the makeup artist. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. She was looking at you the same way that you were looking at you. Okay. So we got to make sure that we are willing to push back. And it's uncomfortable because we don't want to criticize someone's work, but it's your face. It's your face. How fair is it for you to have to navigate something on your face, right? So we got to do a lot better job at this speaking up. Okay, that leads me to number 5. Please let go of the guilt. Why are you feeling guilty about your own boundary? Why? It's yours. Setting boundaries isn't rude, it's not selfish, it's not uncooperative. Okay? Setting boundaries, if you are setting well managed boundaries, they help you stay well, they make you more productive, they help you control your time and your energy. Okay? You got to stop feeling guilty. Hey, if I got to give you some feedback, I got to give you some feedback. If you are crossing a boundary and I need to share that with you, then I need to go ahead and actually let that message Go. I cannot continue to be in a situation where what I am doing is feeling guilty about the boundary. My sister and I were on the phone last night, and one of the things she said to me was, I've gotten a couple calls where they've asked me to pick up some shifts. She waits, she's a server in, in Chicago. So she's like, they've asked me to pick up some shifts, and, I've said no. And I'm not doing that because, I need to take care of my well-being. And if I'm not rested, then I don't do a good job. And this also happens. And I could hear her, she was like, fighting herself, right? And I said, "Hey, who are you being defensive with?" She said, "Oh, you're right. I don't know why I'm so defensive." I was like, "Who do you feel like you need to convince that you shouldn't feel bad about the boundary?" You are fighting your own guilt because somewhere in your body, there's this little voice that's like, you should have picked up the extra shift. And now you're fighting with it. No, I need to take care of myself. I need to do this. Hey, let go of the guilt. Free yourself. Boundaries are healthy. Okay. Setting boundaries isn't rude or selfish or uncooperative. It makes you more productive, makes you a better human being. A couple other things I want to give you. All right. A couple things that's important around boundaries. And this is in the podcast episode too. Number one, boundaries are not a way, okay, for us to avoid uncomfortable but necessary conversations. It could be a parent's voice. That's a good point. So, we don't want to say things like, I don't want to have tough conversations. If you're going to be negative, then we can't talk. What you're really doing is just avoiding it, right? Set a time to actually have the real conversation. We want to not use boundaries as like a sneaky tool to avoid stuff. The other thing we want to be mindful of is, we're not using boundaries to control other people. So to get what you want, you want to say, well, this is how this needs to go because I have a boundary. This is not the way this goes. We don't have a license to demand accommodations for others while making none yourself. Boundaries are not for that. Boundaries are for us to make sure we are taking good care of ourselves, but they are not intended to be used to bully others. Okay. I feel like y'all been in the therapy chats over here in this chat box. But please keep the conversation going for sure. I feel better receiving a little pity, sympathy, empathy from y'all. Fortunately, my teen daughters cleaned me up a bit before the photos. I'm so glad that the family photos didn't have you out there looking like grouchy because you would have never let anybody share them, Carrie. And that's what photos are for. All right, let's hop to the third bullet here under being good. Requires being good, like the being part matters. You got to come up with a recharge plan. All right. So when you're thinking about the ways that you are navigating showing up your best, showing up as a good human, showing up as an empathetic human with boundaries, who, honors their commitments, who's an effective communicator, all those fantastic things we said at the top that make us a good person, self-aware, taking care of ourselves, all of those things, right? You got to have a good recharge plan because listen, life is going to suck you dry. It's busy. It's a lot going on. There are plenty of things to think about. We're all navigating a lot, and you will inevitably find yourself stressed and depleted. It is a part of the human condition. I'm going to give you a few data points that I think kind of helped me change my mind about the way that I handle recharging. First and foremost, there's data that says long-term stress actually shrinks your prefrontal cortex. Now, that's the part of your brain that helps you with decision making and self-control. So the more stressed you are, the less good you are at decision making and self-control because you're shrinking that part of your brain. And not only that, long-term stress increases the size and activity of your amygdala, which is your fear center. So now you're stressed and scared. And that leads to more anxiety and more impulsive behaviors. The neuroscience says long-term stress isn't it. We got to figure out how to let that go. Okay. We got to be good. Second, physical activity actually enhances our brain plasticity. It improves our memory and it can increase your hippocampal volume, okay, which is the part of your brain that's crucial for learning and emotional regulation. Physical activity, that moving thing so that we can be good, okay, movement is a good recharge tool. There's data that says that helps your brain, all right? Third, 8 weeks of mindfulness. I am mindfulness certified for those of you who do not know. So when I'm giving you all this good stuff about why you need these things and why we can't just decide we want to be equitable people, we got to take care of ourselves first. This is why. Mindfulness, 8 weeks of mindfulness meditation can increase gray matter areas associated with self-awareness, with compassion, and with introspection. All right. So when we say we want to be more compassionate, more empathetic, more caring, when we say we want to have more self-awareness, we need to actually practice the mindfulness stuff. There is data that says that works. Okay. Set yourself up for success by picking some techniques. I'm going to give you just a few. Running, if you are a running person, running is great for your body. My boyfriend is a runner now and it blows my mind, but that's his thing. He gets frustrated, he goes out and goes for a run. Okay. Working out, whatever variation of that, that it is for you, make sure that you are getting some movement in. We have data that says that that's imperative. A good hug. The data says 6 seconds of a good hug. Okay. You may have seen that on your socials. It's definitely been a part of my feed. A good hug is actually really, really good for your brain. Helps to recharge you, helps you get that, energy that you need to be able to navigate the challenges that you're going to face. Number three, lots of you who have had coaching with me or are just friends with me know I do this all the time. Keep a smile file. If you don't know what a smile file is, it is when you make an intentional effort to capture the things that happen to you that feel really good. You got some great feedback. Okay. You had someone send you a really, really thoughtful text message or voice note. Whatever that is, organize that stuff in a folder, even if it's on your phone, put that stuff somewhere, okay? Because keeping a smile file gives you a place to go when you are having a tough moment and reminding you, oh my gosh, I'm actually really great and helpful and loving and people value me. You can go to a folder to get that, right? So some of those accolades, yeah, cool. But there's nothing like someone giving us some really good feedback or sharing what they think about us or expressing care. Save those things, especially, listen, I've gotten some of the most beautiful messages after people have heard podcasts, after people have gone through these classes. And so I try to make sure I screenshot those and keep those, okay? Because yes, sometimes I need a file in my phone called laugh just because I need to laugh. Babies laughing also really works. Okay. Super good for the brain. Okay. So keep a smile file. Take a bath. Baths are also really good. Anything we can do to get that mind body connection happening. Breathing exercises, box breathing. Everybody talks about that one. So the box breathing, if you don't know what box breathing is, it's when you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. You see, so that's the box. Okay, 4 seconds doesn't have to be your number. It may be seven. You make your own number choice there, but that's box breathing. Again, helps that mind body connection happen. All right, so when we're thinking about self awareness, compassion, introspection, okay, those things, you're going to get that with your box breathing and taking a bath. Reading, also, literally the actual act of reading a book, not like audio booking. Audio booking isn't the same. If you are using your eyeballs and your hands and either a tablet or a Kindle or an actual physical book, something about the actual act of reading does something really great and yummy for your brain from a mindfulness standpoint. And then try to play, but here's the trick: no screens. Figure out what play looks like for you, but no screen. So not play video games, okay? What does play look like for you? For me, that's Legos, right? Some of y'all know I love Legos. So what does play look like, but with no screens? Also really good at helping to build that mind-body connection. Again, make a recharge plan. You need a recharge plan because when life gets tough, what happens? We slide into the hole and we got to figure out how to get out. And if we don't have a plan for getting out, we can get in big trouble. Okay. So we got to have a plan. Ooh, let me go to my smile file. Ooh, let me get up and go run. Oh, wait a minute. Let me do my breathing exercises. Okay. We got to have some tools ready because again, life is going to put us in some of those tough spaces and we've got to make sure that we get out. I love that you play the violin. That's incredible. Sewing, quilting, needlepoint. These are so good. All right. Thank y'all for sharing these. These are really good activities that you can do. Okay. Needlepoint and all that little hand stuff, sewing. I wish I was good at that. My mom tried to help me with that and never happened. Will says he does morning meditation for at least 5 minutes and it's been very beneficial and healthy for you. I have also started to make a practice of giving my brain something good before I actually hop out of the bed or even pick up my phone and look at my screen. So, yes, let's figure out how we can get those mind body connections going and go back to those tools when we're having a tough day. All right. Leads me to my next slide, which is a question I want to ask you. How would you rate your willingness to be uncomfortable on a scale of 1 to 10? So one obviously being, I need a little work, and then 10 being, I'm pretty willing to be uncomfortable. I could do that. I can do that. I see your question, Anonymous, that you dropped over there in questions, and I'm going to get to it too. Just give me a second to get through this portion here. All right. These are good numbers. All right. I see some sevens and some nines. I see some fives. That's okay. We're going to give you some tools. It's okay. It's all good. Listen, a five is all right. As of lately, 8 or 9, I like that. Sixes are good. Listen, I My folks know me. Let's be uncomfortable. If I'm uncomfortable, we all uncomfortable. I have said that many times. Okay, like I don't have a problem with uncomfortable, but just know if I got to be there, we gonna all have to feel a little bit. And that's kind of the purpose. Like discomfort doesn't have to be something you navigate alone. It is supposed to be a shared experience. And what happens when we navigate it alone is that we're holding things in and we're suppressing and we make ourselves sick. So we want to make sure that we are willing to be uncomfortable and also recognizing that sometimes that also means some other folks might need to be a little uncomfortable too. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about leaning into discomfort. I told you I would give you some tools around this, and we're going to go through three pieces for this one too. So, first, name the discomfort. Discomfort is data. Remember, your brain's job is to keep you alive. Your brain is wired for survival. It's not necessarily wired for joy. It's not necessarily wired for fulfillment. Okay. So it's going to very often try to resist growth because it's like, wait a minute, what's that over there? I don't know what's going on. Okay. But the good news is you can train your brain. And every single time you choose courage over comfort, you strengthen your capacity for the next thing that you're going to do. Okay. And so discomfort is data. The first thing you want to do is actually name the discomfort. I am uncomfortable with. I am overwhelmed by. I feel anxious because this is new and I'm scared I'm going to mess it up. Okay? Name the discomfort. All right? I do not enjoy heights and I need to blah 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 that requires me to go over this, elevated bridge. Whatever it is, name the discomfort. The reason this works is because neuroscience says that when we label emotions, it engages that prefrontal cortex. Remember that part of our rational brain. And it reduces the activation of the amygdala, the part that makes you feel scared. So if we can label it, it helps to calm that emotional response. And you can start to have a little bit of resilience to move through the discomfort instead of being impulsive. Name it. I am uncomfortable with this because it makes me feel guilty. I am uncomfortable with this because it makes me have to be honest about my shortcomings. Label the stuff. You don't necessarily have to label it out loud, but you should at least label it for yourself. Okay. So naming emotions actually puts us in a better position for our brains to work better so that we have the strength to push through. Label, name the discomfort. Okay. Call it out. The second thing that we want to think about when we're talking about leaning into discomfort is you get it by taking tiny, consistent risks. You get good at navigating that discomfort by taking small, consistent risks. It doesn't have to be a huge, huge, huge thing, right? But sometimes the small things get you there, okay? Every journey is made up of little steps. So your brain learns safety. Remember, it's trying to keep us safe. Your brain learns safety through exposure. So, small, repeated opportunities to expose your brain to things actually gradually rewire your neural pathways. So, it helps you to build some confidence and have some resilience. It actually makes it a bit easier for you to be uncomfortable. So, instead of, oh my God, I'm going to quit my job, all right? What you can instead say is, I'm going to try to speak up in the next meeting. Just at least say something. I'm going to make a point to get out of my discomfort and nerviness, and I'm going to actually do this. Instead of deciding I'm going to run a marathon by the end of the month, I'm going to try to walk a mile tomorrow. I'm gonna do that instead. So sometimes we just have to try the small, consistent risk. If we are willing to lean into that small discomfort and build it up over time, that's how we get to the marathon. That's how we get to, getting to the place where we can actually hit some of these bigger goals, some of these bigger things that make us uncomfortable because we're willing to take the small steps first. Okay. All right. I see a question. What if we get so uncomfortable that our natural fear impulse doesn't kick in when we need it? That doesn't actually happen unless there's a mental health issue there. So the study that this actually comes from is called The Brain That Changes Itself. So if you go look at that study, they actually talk a little bit about that in there. Most of the time in a healthy brain, your fear impulse is going to kick in. We are very often going to have to figure out how to push past it. Okay. And so you've kind of got to just kind of trust that that's happening. And if you do not have fear, that is usually an indication of, some other neurological thing that might be going on, which I am not skilled enough to support with. But good question. All right. So then we're going to go to the third one. Yeah, the brain that changes itself. And then the third one here is reframe your fear. Okay, so your brain often, mistakes uncertainty as a threat. So it could be that you just don't know what's going on. It could be that you don't have as much information as you'd like. It could be that something is just changing. And what we actually have to start to do is reframe our fear. So you can train your brain's response by seeing, oh, I'm fear as a signal to go, okay, wait a minute, what's going on? Remember, discomfort is data. All right, discomfort is data. Your brain's job is just trying to keep you alive, not necessarily fulfilled. So it's saying, hey, uncertainty, right? And that doesn't necessarily have to be a threat. And so what happens is that when this occurs for me, I say, okay, wait, is this real fear? Am I really afraid? Am I actually in danger? Or is this just a new experience? Or is this just something I haven't done before? Or is this just something I'm unfamiliar with? Most of the time, particularly once you're an adult, you kind of know, this is just new. I'm not really used to navigating this. It's an opportunity for me to stretch a little bit. Okay. And so there's, a bit of a intentional reframe that we can do that helps us to do better with discomfort. You're going to feel it. Discomfort. I always tell people somewhere between your nose and your navel, you get this, this feeling that trickles up. When that happens, we now know, what is that? Let me call it what it is. Oh, I might actually be feeling a little bit jealous because I'm listening to somebody that's accomplished some things I wish I had accomplished. Suddenly, it's a little bit easier to lean into a connection after I've identified the emotion. Take the tiny risk. Ooh, I feel a little bit of discomfort. I think it's because I have a question that I actually want to ask, and I'm a little nervous to ask the question. Let me go ahead and take the chance to do that. All right. Take the tiny risk of speaking up and asking the question, of taking the first step, of going for the walk that's a mile instead of committing to the marathon that's 26. Okay. And then let's intentionally reframe. Ooh, I feel a little uncertainty. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Remember, we just want to remember it's a signal. It isn't necessarily a stop sign. Okay. And so these are the things that we can do to kind of help us to navigate discomfort. And discomfort is going to happen all the time. Again, your brain is always working to protect you. So anytime you encounter something you haven't seen or heard before, it's going to immediately jump to fear. I was looking at my best friend's Instagram stories earlier today, and there was a little, the lint that comes out of the dryer. Every once in a while, you get those little balls that kind of float away. And so she opened her laundry closet, and a little black dust ball kind of blew from under the dryer near her foot. And she was like, I could have jumped out of my skin, completely afraid. I just knew it was a spider coming to devour me or turn me into Spider Woman. Okay. Because this thing just came crawling out from under the dryer. And it's, again, your brain is wired to be afraid. Like, what is that? And immediately fear, right? And so we have to remember, my brain's trying to protect me. Let me go ahead and put in some of these tactics so that you have the resilience to go ahead and push forward. Okay. Carrie says an associate of mine works with inner city youth so much that when she sees people that resemble those youth, she immediately tells herself there's nothing to be concerned about and may throw caution out the window with strangers. That is a concern. I do think that there has to be a balance. Yeah, for sure. There definitely has to be a balance with that. We do not want to temper, your fear response should still be a signal, just like I just said, hey, let's check this. All right. Can I define what's going on? We want to make sure that that isn't putting us in a position, where we're just operating out of folly. Right. So it leads me to my next question. How often do you choose to say nothing because you are unsure what to say? Okay, so give me a one if it's me, say something, not saying anything. Okay, like not at all. Or are you more like, I'm saying the thing and I'm checking that you heard it? All right, where are you on this list? Okay, how often do you choose to say nothing because you aren't sure what to say? Okay, all right. I got some fours and some threes. This is good. Okay, what else? Five in most situations. I kind of got the feeling that that was going to be the case for you, Tara. I appreciate that about you. Tawana said, I'm a six. I'm not even on the scale. I'm going to say all the things. Good, good. We do need some people to say the things, but we also got to make sure we have a little tact with those things too, because I am a say the thing and I got to practice the tact part sometimes, right? So there's that. All right. So I see lots of middle of the roads, some threes and fours. Okay. I appreciate you with your honest too. All right. So thank you for that. Um, Yeah, quiet isn't bad, but I know exactly what you mean. It took you time to get there. I can relate. Maybe a one. It's okay. It's all right to be a one. We're gonna navigate through some of this. I'm gonna give you some tools. So listen, if there's one thing that I get asked for the most, if there's one thing that I feel like my friends and my folks call me about, it is, okay, this thing just happened. So tell me what I'm supposed to say. I get it all the time because I am the person who is going to say it and I'm likely to say it well. And I am practiced at this. It has taken me some time. And so here is what I'm going to do. We're going to go through, here is what to say when. Okay, because this is the thing I don't want to be in your way. And then I'm going to give you a couple other techniques that you can use as well. All right. So the first one is, Amber, do you have a phone line? I wish, right? I wish I need an app or like a clone of myself. But the first one is, what do you say when you want to hold someone accountable? Okay, what do I say when I want to hold someone accountable? This one is common. Someone is not doing what it is that they are supposed to do, and we are trying to hold someone accountable with dignity. We want to focus on being clear and not seeming controlling. I want to hold you accountable. I'm not necessarily trying to tear you down. I might be frustrated, but I'm not trying to tear you down. All right, so here's how we're going to navigate that. First, you want to try to make sure you lead with impact. Okay, so you want to say something like, I want to talk about something that I think could be impacting the way that the team is showing up. All right. So think about the thing that's being harmed. I want to talk about the impact that it has when you are late, to pick up, our daughter from school or whatever it might be. Lead with the impact, not with the blame. I want to talk about something. This is what it's impacting. Okay. That's how we address that accountability. We make sure people can see, hey, this is the harm you're doing. The other thing that you could potentially say is, I want to make sure that I'm giving you the details about that impact as well. So I can say, when you missed this deadline, it caused this to happen. I was frustrated. It impacted the way that the team's communication, flowed. And so I need you to, really understand the impact of your behavior. So, like, thinking about that impact can go a long way. And you can also think about a question, to help drive the conversation. What do you think we can do differently so that we don't have to navigate this again? This isn't the most effective approach. Is there a better way that we can navigate this? So think about how we can pull those in. Impact, okay? Impact. Then I also have here, you want to stay curious and not necessarily, pull that confrontation energy in. And this is tough when we feel like someone is not doing what they are supposed to be doing. So, can we talk through what happened together? I want to walk through this with you because I need to make sure that we're on the same page. This is actually one I say very often. Can you show me how you got there? Because I'm not sure that I follow and I want to make sure that we're on the same page. Okay. This makes it clear that I'm on your team and I'm trying to understand what's happening, but you're also going to be accountable for the thing that you're supposed to do. There's no letting you off the hook here. But what we are going to do is actually look at it together. All right, let's look at it together. Okay. And often when people haven't done what they're supposed to do, they'll say, oh, well, I don't really have anything to show you right now. And here's why. Suddenly the ownership shows up. And so being very skilled with kind of like how you frame your questions and how you position your language is what you want to do when you want to hold someone accountable. Hmm. Can you help me understand what you mean when you said, right? When you heard something that wasn't quite right, you can also use that. I use that example quite a bit. Okay, now what do I say when someone is being disrespectful? Oh, wait, Tara, let's see what you have. I had an AVP lie using my name. I was shocked, but I asked him directly with a neutral voice with a hint of doubt that he would do something like that. Result, he admitted it, apologized for throwing me under the bus, and called the person he lied to clear it up. I had something very similar happen to me as well, where someone was telling a lie about me and I called him and he did the same thing. Sometimes you just need to call people and say, okay, what I was told was this. Now, is that what happened? Right? And people don't like that. They're like, no, let me clear this up because now I have stepped in it. People don't like that. So hold people accountable. Sometimes it's just as simple as holding the mirror up and say, I noticed this. Is this right? Okay. And people will step up to their accountability. Okay, the next one here is, what do I do when someone is being disrespectful? A lot of us, I saw a clip today, a woman in Congress, I won't go into names, specifically addressing a reporter, and it was the most disrespectful exchange. And I just honestly was like, wow, so I'm going to talk to you about what you do when it's, that level of disrespect. But with this particular one, I mean like kind of a lower level of disrespect, like, perhaps, unintentional, or even, something that's a little bit passive aggressive. That's more what I'm speaking about when I say, here's what you say when someone is being disrespectful. That more pointed type of disrespect, I'm going to give you a stronger example for a little bit later. Okay. So the goal here is I want to interrupt whatever harm is being done without escalating or alienating people. And, I'm gonna hold a little space so that we can have a conversation, but I'm gonna hold the line of where respect actually resides, right? So when it's something that's going on, I am feeling like it needs to be interrupted immediately, as I'm gonna say, hey, can we go back for just a moment? I want to revisit your last remark. Or I'm not sure I follow what you mean. Can you say more about that? Y'all know I use to say more about that. Really quickly, someone's being disrespectful and I kind of hear it. It's a little sneaky. Let's go back just a moment. Can you help me understand what you meant when you said, okay? This is how you this is accountability, but specifically around disrespect, okay? If it's something that is pointedly just wrong, you can also name what's happening. That sounds a little bit like it could be a stereotype. Is that what you intended to convey? Most people are going to say no, or they're just going to correct the behavior. Well, what I was intending was, I came across a video today where a man was very pointed that said, well, this sounds like you are okay with oppression. Is that what you intend to convey? And the gentleman literally just sat there in silence because it was what he intended to convey, but he did not want to say that out loud. Okay. And so this is, again, holding people accountable, but specifically around disrespect. People will tell you who they are. You put the mirror right in front of them, they will tell you who they are. You've just got to be bold enough to show up and do it in the way that works for you. All right. So we got to make sure that we lean in that way. Another thing that you can do is, and I've kind of touched on this a little bit, is like kind of use, the clarity thing. Can you help me understand what you meant by that? Okay. Gives you a chance to, give that person a chance to rethink it. Also, helps them see, I saw what you were putting down. Okay. So we can pull that around. And then, if it is pointed, people are frustrated, maybe there's just like a values point happening, slight disagreement. I may say something that's like, okay, well, I think that we both want to have a really respectful conversation. So, let's try to get back to the place where the conversation feels respectful. Okay, we can navigate right on back to that. Are you okay with us? Let's find a way to make sure we're showing up in the conversation in a way that feels respectful. Can we do that? Yes, absolutely. Let's do that. Okay, so we want to find those tools. It flows off my tongue because I use it. So I see y'all sitting here like, oh my gosh, you just can say this. I say it and I can say it because I use these techniques. So use them, use them, use them, and it'll come to you just as quickly. By the way, if you're a person who needs to buy yourself a little time, that's okay. Buying time is fine. So what you want to do if you're trying to buy yourself a little time is put a little bit of a spacer kind of sentence there. And that's usually going to be, I think I need to process that a little more. What I think I heard was, and you're repeating what that person said. What that's doing is it's giving it back to them and it's giving you a chance to process it as well. And so, like those space creating sentences, don't ever feel like you have to rush. There are also times where you can say, I need a moment to process that. I need to think about how I feel about that. Can you give me a second to react? No one's going to say no. You don't get a second to react. Well, I might tell you no, but most people are not going to tell you no, right? So, what we want to do is try to think about the way that we can create space. If you are a person where, having that quick response isn't necessarily just settled in your brain because you haven't necessarily practiced it, you can buy yourself a little bit of time in that way too. Okay. All right. Next one is, here is what to say when emotions are high or the topic is very inflammatory and folks are real likely to get upset. Okay. The goal in this case is we want to de escalate the emotions. And hopefully, we want to try to protect the relationship. We want to try to make sure that we are, not going to tear things up. Okay. So sometimes what I think is a good way to, lead with this is very similar to what I shared a moment ago. Hey, I really want to make sure we keep this conversation productive, but it feels like maybe we're getting into a hot button area. Can we just pause? Let's just pause and take a breath and step away. Okay. You got to time this right. You get too far into the anger, no one's pausing. The words are just going. You got to catch it at the right point before you're there. Okay. So make sure that hey, I want to keep this productive. Lets the person know your goal. All right. I'm not trying to shut you down. I know you're feeling a lot. I'm feeling a lot, but we will be a lot better if we step away and take a breath. And so you can insert that way. You can, another framing for that might be, can we come back to this with cooler heads maybe a little bit later? What's your tomorrow like? So it doesn't have to just be take a breath. Sometimes it can be, hey, let's cool off and come back at another point. The point is, what you want to try to do is create a little bit of room so folks can kind of chill out a little bit. Another thing that you can do is encourage people to lead with curiosity. So, I've said things like, this can be a bit of a hot button issue. And I want to make sure that we're being as thoughtful and respectful around this topic, because it does deserve that level of attention. Can we all agree to stay curious? Can we all agree to be committed to respect? Whatever language you'd like to use. This is loaded. I want to give it the respect it deserves. Can we agree to keep curiosity at the center of our discussions? This is usually really helpful when you got to talk about something difficult that people are going to be kind of emotional, and it invites you to pull it back in later. Hey, I recognize that this is a hot topic, but remember, we all agreed that we were going to stay curious and try to engage in the conversation respectfully. Gives you a thread to pull on so that, that tough conversation can get pulled back into the space where people are able to be heard. And speaking of heard, that's another sentence that you can use as well. Hey, I think we're both really trying to be heard right now. I'm going to try to practice a little bit of patience. So can we try again? Okay, so there's another approach. When emotions are high, you are looking to cool it off, calm it down. Okay, and if you're the person who's catching it, I'm going to be honest, you are the person who most likely can do the chilling out guiding, right? Someone's got to take the lead on that. So if you notice that it's hot and the other person hasn't acted like they notice that it's hot, you are probably going to be the one to say, can we take a pause? All right. You might not want to, but you're the one who's noticing it. So you're going to have to be the one responsible for taking the action. Okay. Emotions are high. You notice it. What can I do to bring the temperature down on this conversation? Okay. Let's go to the next one. Here is what to say when. Oh, wow. We're already at 7:30. I'm about to run over. This is the first time that's happened. Okay. If y'all need to go, please go ahead. You will still get the recording, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap these last few slides up too. All right. So you want to showcase empathy. The things that you want to do is make sure that you're helping the other person feel seen, not that you're trying to fix them. Okay. So what empathy usually sounds like is, this sounds like it really took a toll on you. Man, that makes so much sense. I can see exactly why you feel like that. You can also ask an open-ended question. What do you need? Conrad, who was in here, also asks that very often of me, which is, what do you need? How can I help you? I am very good at also asking, what do you need? Would it be helpful if I just listened or offered feedback? That's another technique that we can use. And then, another tool is we want to make sure that we give room to the dialogue. So sometimes it's just be quiet and listen, throw some head nods in there. I understand that, right? And so we want to make sure that we're showing up that way as well. So these are the tactics that you can use when it's what to say when something is going on that potentially is going to go awry. Because as I think about the ways that we are trying to make sure that we're showing up well, this is what gets in the way. We freeze. We don't know what it is that we're supposed to say. Now, there are a couple other things that I wanted to share with you too before I go ahead and slide to the Q&A section. And so the first one is, how can I respectfully challenge someone's perspective? See if it's even possible. All right. Hey, I have another point of view. Are you open to listening? If they tell you no, stop. Okay, stop. If no, I'm not interested in listening. No problem. Let it go. We've got to let it go. Okay. The second thing you can say is, I'm concerned that maybe you have some limited information. Can I share some additional information with you? If they say no, stop. Okay. We have to be okay acknowledging when people are not ready. Right? So if it's not possible, we got to let it go. But we have a couple techniques so that we can check to see if it's possible. And then the last one, especially if you think it's an unintentional, kind of situation, you can say, I'm not sure I follow what you mean. Or are you suggesting, when we're trying to challenge someone's perspective? You always want to try to see, though, if it's possible, because sometimes people don't want to hear you. There was a time I was doing a training and I used an example. A young lady in the chat got really uncomfortable with that example and was like, this is completely inappropriate. I can't believe you, blah, blah, blah. I proceeded to try to say, are you open to hearing another perspective? Nope, it's wrong. You're wrong. And I'd let her go. Look, please have your party. I cannot engage with you. You are unwilling to engage. So we have to be open to that. We also sometimes are going to encounter people who are unwilling to shift. They are unwilling to change their perspective, their ideas. In that case, stop engaging. That example that I told you earlier about super disrespectful conversation showing up, I would have probably said, hey, I can see that you're passionate, but I'm not sure that I'm feeling heard. The minute that that behavior continues past that, I'm going to tell you, well, I'm done engaging. I'm going to remove myself here. I can see you're passionate about this, but I don't want to talk about it. Hey, I really appreciate your interest. I would prefer to have a conversation about something else. I do not like having conversations about this topic because it sets people off. Are you open to changing the subject? Okay. So we want to be open to what we can do if people are unwilling to shift. People are, unfortunately, very, to your point, Tara, there are people who are just, that's what they want to do. They want to fuss, they want to fight, they want to make big performative gestures so that they can be on social media looking like a fool. We want to give them the room to do that. Okay. We can stay out of the way and give them all the room that they need to show up, however that is. All right. Couple things I want to tell you on confidence, and then I'm moving to the Q&A portion here. First things first, confidence takes practice and repetition. If you are finding that it's a little difficult sometimes for you to actually have the confidence that you think you should have, please remember that neuroplasticity comes from you doing it over and over and over. Practice confident body language, practice using confident statements. Make sure that you are doing it over and over so that you actually start to feel confident. The repetition is what makes it happen. And then the other piece about confidence is you may not feel confident, but people often can still perceive it. So your brain is actually your least accurate mirror. All right. You don't see yourself clearly. Most of us don't. And so what you want to do is recognize that, what you are seeing may not be what other people see. People are usually going to see some things that you aren't catching up. So if you're using that good positive body language, right? You look confident, you are communicating confidently, people are going to pick that up because very honest, data says that our brains are actually focused on ourselves. We are critiquing ourselves. We are our worst critics. Okay. People are not noticing your mistakes or awkwardness as much as they are focused on their own stuff. Okay. So if confidence is your issue and you feel like, oh my gosh, I just don't have the confidence, this is absolutely a fake it till you make it situation. Start doing it, start showing up in it, and you will start to discover that the confidence will start to be there. All right. This is the last slide in my session here. So if you have questions, now would be the time for you to start thinking about those. I do want to pull up our beautiful survey link. Okay. I'm about 7 minutes over, so I expect that someone will probably say that. But please, please, please take the survey. Okay. Very soon, if you cannot get your phone out and scan this lovely QR code, you will also see pop up in the chat a link for you to be able to take the survey. Thank you so much for that, Jesse. And so I would love for you to please take the survey, even if you are watching a replay. If you are watching this as a replay, please take the survey because it does matter to me how people are experiencing this. And I want to hear what your recommendations and thoughts are. And also, sometimes y'all give me really yummy stuff for me to put in my smile file. Okay. So please take the survey if you can. Pull your phone out, scan this, or take advantage of the link, which is ambercabral.com/course feedback. And you'll be able to load that up and actually start to give me some thoughts. And then another note that I want to give to folks, because I know everyone hasn't necessarily had a chance to go through all of the sessions. There were two previous. One was on March 13th. The other one was on March 20th. So you will have access to all of these. They're all available to you when you get the link. What's going to happen is you'll have the ability to click and see any of the three sessions. So this one you'll get as a replay, but you will also have the opportunity to, say, oh, I want to watch one of the others. I give away goodies and nuggets and activities in every single one of these. So please go back through and take advantage of, whatever learning you would like. I'm going to leave them out there. And by the way, if you want to share them with someone, you have to send them the link. They can't go find them, but in April, they will likely all be publicly available, so people will have an opportunity to go ahead and, take advantage of these as well. They're just going to sit out there on YouTube, free learning if that's what you want. And then the last thing before I get to Q&A is if you want to keep in touch with me, screenshot. All right. Take this screenshot and you can go ahead and find me wherever, I may be out on the interwebs. If you go to ambercabral.com, you'll find podcast links. There's my podcast graphic there. This learning series pairs really well with the podcast. So if you enjoyed these, this session or any of the others, you will really, really, really appreciate the podcast. So the links there, TED links, I gave a TED talk last year. That's out there. Jesse's also dropped some really yummy links in the chat for you as well. If you're looking to book me, if you want to buy one of my books, please go to ambercabral.com. If you want to follow me, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Blue Sky are the best